Hey, welcome into Husker247. Going to be talking a little high school football and recruiting here. And so that means we need to bring in an expert. And what better expert in the state of Nebraska than the hardest working man in the media? You know him as Mike Sautter. He covers college basketball. He's covering all three D1 college basketball teams simultaneously this year. He was looking for a bigger challenge. He wants to stay away from social obligations, family time, anything that he possibly might need to do on a Saturday or Sunday. He doesn't want that. He wants to be in the gym. But before we deep into that, we're going to finish up the high school football season. Mike Sautter, how are we doing today?
That's very kind of you, Schaefer, to call me an expert. Depending on who you ask, you'd get a little dicey responses.
Well, look, I know that I utilize your services when I have questions about Nebraska high school athletics. So, as far as I'm concerned, you're the expert in my Rolodex, and I don't really need everyone else's opinion on it. So,
That's fine.
look, it's also my job to build you up as our guest today. People need to know that you know your stuff, and I know you do, and they'll find out as well. So, we've got the semifinals for Nebraska high school football today. Winners of this will then play Memorial Stadium on Monday and Tuesday, Thanksgiving week. Same thing as it's always been. We were talking a little bit before the show started. There's not, with apologies to the other teams in Class A, it's basically felt like it's been building to Millard South, Omaha West Side all year. Now, other teams will have their say in this. We will see what Kearney or Omaha North are able to do in their respective matchups. But this is not a particularly juicy high school year for Class A football. Is that unfair to say?
No, I that's very fair. We've kind of all year, even before the year when June and maybe even before that, knew that it was West Side and Miller South were the two top teams, the two best teams. Not saying either one of them is unbeatable because obviously they're going to have to maybe play each other in a final. But it's been those two clearly as the leaders in the clubhouse, if you will, the entire year in Class A, and it felt like a collision course all year, and it's kind of worked out that way. And there's a little bit of tension between the two sides, and a little bit of like, you know, um, sides not liking each other very much. So I think that kind of brings some intrigue to it. Miller South lost last year in the semis to Elkhorn South. It was an upset. And so Kearney plays Miller South, and they played once earlier this year. It wasn't close. The weather looks like it'll hold up, which is kind of unique. In the last handful of years, the semifinal night has been just brutally bad weather, whether it's, -20 wind chills and all that stuff. So the weather is a lot better. Looks like it will be tonight, and so that obviously plays into Miller South's favor. Now, I will say this as far as Kearney's concerned: Coach Cool is a great coach. He's really, really good on the bounce back or getting the team the second time and figuring some things out. But, that's a lot of points to make up. I think it was 56-3 or something like that, 6 maybe. So we're talking about, running clock to make up from the last time they played to this time. And, health matters. Miller South has lost 2 linebackers, and so defensively, how's that work? But keeping that Millard South offense off the field is priority number 1 because they are just ridiculous. I mean, Jet Tamala has been fantastic as far as just distributing the ball around. And it's weird, right? One of the knocks on him was like he can't move, he can't run. Well, the last 2 games, he's moved in the pocket, moved out of the pocket. He's extended plays behind the line of scrimmage. His offensive line has done a tremendous job too of giving him time, but he's also been able to he's shown that he can be mobile and buy some time. I mean, in the first round game, he had 56 yards rushing. So, that's a thing. So he's a lot more athletic than I think people give him credit for. And I think he's a really good quarterback. I really, really do. And then obviously you have Chase Loftin, he's thrown it to. Isaac Jensen, he's thrown it to. Amarion Jackson, he's thrown it to. All guys that have power conference offers. And a guy that is not talked about at all enough is Amir Hill, who is their slot receiver who they can run jet sweeps. He's super quick. He's a little shifty guy. So their offense is pretty dang good.
Yeah, I think the thing that's impressive about Jet Tamala is that he's been able to distribute it fairly equally across those three guys. I mean, one of the big questions when Chase Lofton transferred over there is there's only one football. How is everybody going to, everybody wants theirs. Everybody wants to win, but everybody also wants to produce. And, they'll have the game where Isaac Jensen has 3 touchdowns, or the game where Chase Lofton has 2 touchdowns, or Amarion Jackson has the big, like they've done a nice job, I think, keeping everybody happy. And, defenses have to try to figure out which one you want to take away at the expense of leaving the other two in one-on-one matchups, or frankly, straight up wide open. And it's a tough riddle for high school defensive coordinators to try to solve when you've got a quarterback that can put the ball on the money for the most part to these guys. And, oh, by the way, the shortest one of them is Amarion Jackson at like 6'1", 6'2", and he's physical. Like he's not afraid of going up and getting contested catches either.
Amarion Jackson, the thing, so Chase Lofton leads them with 726 yards receiving. Jackson is second with 677. Isaac Jensen is third with 593, and Amir Hill is fourth with 505. And they all have, 10, 9, 7, 8 touchdowns.
They're playing half of games generally.
And they didn't play a game and a half, remember? So, because they, forfeits and stuff. So, the thing with Jackson, too, is he's playing both ways this year. He's playing safety and receiver. So, kind of, giving him a little bit of time to relax a little bit on certain plays. But he's, down the stretcher, he's going to play a lot. He is, I said this before the season in June after watching a bunch of 7-on-7. He reminds me a lot of Xavier Watts. When he was in high school, everyone was like, well, he doesn't run fast enough. He's not shifty enough. He's not this. He's not that. He can't do this. But what he can do is make plays. So that's all that matters, right?
Would you say he's made some plays for Notre Dame defensively?
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. I think he's been pretty good. And I do think Jackson's future might be like as a safety, right? So it's kind of the parallels real similar there about how you can kind of see it, coming. And I know Coach Wisdom loves him, patrolling the back end. He's playing free safety for them. So can go up and get balls. He catches everything. Well, they all kind of catch everything. And Isaac Jensen, I feel like every time I see him, he doesn't drop a pass. I don't think I've ever seen him drop anything. And that's like 7-on-7 stuff. That's at practice. That's like, I've seen him.
He had the ridiculous, was it the first round where he had the ridiculous one-hander?
Or he went up like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I was there for that and saw that. And I was like, oh my gosh. Like
someone got a photo. I wish I knew who to give credit to. Someone had a really good photo, or they did a screen capture of the ball. Like it hadn't gotten to Jensen yet, and it just looked like it's going to sail past him. And then the caption was, he caught this with one hand.
Yeah. And he brought it even in with one. He didn't like grab it and then come. He brought it in with one. So he's really good. Their offense is great. You can't really say much more than it's great. They've put up crazy numbers. Imagine if they would have had a full schedule, what that would have looked like. They took that one loss in Arizona, but it's kind of one of those like who cares things. So I Yeah, I think they're the best team. I've said they were the best team since the beginning of the year. But Westside also hasn't lost in 2 years, so it's
Yeah.
kind of one of those things.
Yeah.
Now, I will say this: Kearney does have a nice team. They really do. Like, you don't make the semis without a nice team.
Sure.
And Sawyer Schilke is a stud. He's really really good. So he's going to K State or committed to K State, and that seems like the right fit. And they have a really nice team. It's just, how do you slow down that offense?
Yeah. I want to ask you about Millard South's offensive line. I know they have a couple guys there that are potential college players as well.
Yeah, Carter Glab is probably the primary one. He's more of a defensive guy, I guess. But Landon Von Segren, he transferred over from Papillion La Vista. It was an Iowa offer. Got
Mhm.
that over the summer, and I don't know if Iowa is offering an offensive lineman. That seems they usually do pretty well with offensive linemen. I don't know if you know this or not, but
It
you
is.
know Illinois, Iowa, Kansas, K State, Memphis. That's his offer list right now. I'm sure that will grow, um, as kids camp and do different things. So he's been to Nebraska um, for unofficial game day visits, I guess. So he's probably the lead guy there, and he's been pretty good this year for them. So um, those are the two main linemen, I guess, if you will. And Glab has just recently visited North Dakota. They had actually a couple linemen go up to North Dakota, and so it's like, and Glab plays primarily on the defensive side.
Mhm. All right. Omaha West Side, another pretty loaded team, though. It's unfair to say this because their 2023 group was so good.
Yeah.
It feels like they took a step back, even though they never lost a game. They were never close to losing a game, just because of what they had to sort of replace. But it also doesn't hurt, if you're having to replace your quarterback, and you've got a guy who's very likely going to be a Power Four quarterback in college, and Braylon Warren. His first year as a starter for Westside, they haven't really missed a beat. Again, it's unfair to say they've taken a step back, but it does kind of feel like that given how much they had to replace with what was a pretty fantastic group of guys that won multiple state titles and played in multiple state titles.
Yeah, I mean, that team was awesome. Um, you, they did take a step back talent wise. There's no question. Like, you can't debate that. There's
Yeah.
even, I would say, West Side people would agree with that. It's remarkable what that team looked like last year. And then this year, though, they have like unsung guys that have been great that don't have the offer stuff, like a Quentin Warren for them, which I did just see yesterday. I guess he was at like 20 miles an hour, and this kid's big, like he's
Mhm.
215 probably, and plays linebacker and opposite Christian Jones on the outside, and he uh, is kind of like an H back, or if they need him to be like a power back, he can, and you can split him out tight end. You kind of use him a bunch of different ways. I love him. I think he's their, outside of Braylon Warren at quarterback, their most important player, just because of what he can kind of do. He's super versatile, and I like guys like that. So, but he's the kind of glue guy that doesn't quite get talked about enough. But he's one. And if you watch the West Side play, I think Warren is number 8 and Jones is number 9, and they're both outside linebackers. And you're like, they look similar in
Yeah.
pads, like standing up. So you're like, which one is which? Like, how do you, And then their jerseys are tucked tight, so the numbers aren't like quite clear. So it's kind of, you got to kind of really know what you're looking at. I guess their shoes are different, so that is a way to decipher it.
Look at you paying attention to the shoes.
It's the only way. It's the only way I can tell them apart.
That's funny. So yeah, so they replaced a lot offensively,
Mm.
but they're getting good production out of Keenan Cotton and Eli Johnson, and the passing game has been there with Braylon Warren, who has gotten more comfortable, I think, as the season has gone along. He's a really intriguing guy and was someone that a lot of different high schools would have loved to have had, and he ends up at Westside, spends a year waiting for his opportunity, and honestly, he's kind of just hit the ground running. Like there's been a learning curve, but it's probably gone smoother than even I think Braylon or his dad, former Husker Steve Warren, would have thought coming into it.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. He's been terrific. Spending a year behind Rizak and kind of learning, and Westside has this unique culture, and how they do things is they're all together, and it's the ET and the all for one for all, and those different monikers, but they truly live it. And he has been great. Like even in the summer, I go back to that, and he was awesome then in all the 7-on-7 passing league stuff and our 7-on-7 tournament that we had. He was great there. He's also matured physically, obviously, a lot. Like you generally take a pretty big jump from your freshman to sophomore year, just maturing. And he's been great. He's going to throw for over 2,000 yards. He's only has 6 interceptions. He has 26 touchdowns. He's completing 70% of his passes. That's like tremendous on the year. And it's not
run
just
a little bit.
Yeah, he can move around a little
he
bit.
hunts downfield. He's not just throwing dump off passes.
Right, that's what I mean. It's
he's
not
putting
just
it downfield.
Yeah, and you have guys you can get it to, like Keenan Cotton. Like Keenan Cotton's a stud. Probably doesn't get talked about enough. And Eli Johnson is great, and he's a two-way guy for them, and he's been fantastic. Like he is
been a visitor at multiple Nebraska games.
2026.
Yeah,
he's a guy. He's a guy that
keep an eye on maybe this winter to see how Nebraska views him.
Yeah, that and camping stuff and stuff like that. Like he's a guy that's gonna just keep kind of, I think, being in people's faces and climbing because he has the physical traits as well. Like he has the size and all that stuff. It's just kind of, what position is he? Is he a linebacker? Is he a wide receiver? Is he a tight end? Like what at the next level? I mean, what position is he is the biggest question mark. But I mean, Cotton has been great, and Mo Purify the second. Yes, Maurice Purify Jr. has a son that is a sophomore in high school. For Husker fans, that's like the mind blown thing. Like, wait, what?
Every time he's appeared on a visit list, we get the same. Wait, that Mo Purify?
Yes, that one. Yeah, it's the same one. So
there's no other. There's one.
Yeah, and he's young and he's great. I mean, he looks like a baby deer out there running around right now. And as he gets, physically mature, he's tall. Like he's tall and long. His facial features, he looks just like his dad. Like he's built like him and looks like him and all those things. So he's great. But I will say this. So remember Jackson Williams, for those people that kind of, I guess, follow high school football. He's now at North Dakota State and has returned a couple punts for touchdowns. He was at Millard West last year. Well, his younger brother transferred from Millard West to Westside, Bryson. Yep. He's been awesome. Like, he's been awesome. And him and Purify, they're so young. Like, they look young, but they have those long limbs and stuff that you kind of look at and you're like, okay, yeah, that's good. And that, he's playing defensive back, and he's come along. Like, he's come along. That was a little bit of like a question for them because they lost so much from last year, and he's stepped in and done a nice job for them. So, and then obviously you got to talk about Tate Jenkins and what he's done so far as sophomore running back. And he's been electric. I mean, he's been like 200 yards a game pretty much, and that's been their formula for winning. And then you find a way to get caught in the ball, whether it be, I mean, they do a lot of like quick 5-8 yard out routes and stuff like that. And he's taken a couple of those and just gone. So Keenan's super fast, and I'm interested to see that recruitment and where it's at, because he's a senior. And what is that? Where is that? What does it look like? Like, he's uncommitted right now. He got that Iowa State offer way early in his high school career. Is that still a thing? Um, I'm very interested to see
I believe
what that
Northern
looks.
Illinois is the most recent team that has kind of come into the picture there.
Right. Yeah. Stuff like that. So it's his size, just height is probably something that people are like, I don't know. But he's electric, and obviously on the specials, he's very electric as far as punt return. You don't even punt the ball. You don't even want
Mhm.
to try. Keep it away from him at all costs. So, and they've done some kind of tricky, catchy things with him as far as the return game is concerned, where on kickoff returns they'll line up the two guys together and then they'll split them right before the kick, and so you can't kind of gauge where to not kick it to him, so because he can house one easily all the time.
Yeah. Well, they've get Omaha North, who won't have the services of Tyson Terry, but they've got a few guys that Nebraska's keeping an eye on as well. They're an interesting team. I watched them against Omaha Central. We were both at that game, housed at Omaha Northwest, I believe, is where we were at.
Yeah.
But the guy who sort of took over that game is Darion Jones, whose
Yeah.
older brother, Donovan Jones, has been talked about here lately as someone who might get to play a little bit. He's going to redshirt this year, but he's a talented defensive back that I think Nebraska is excited about the future for. Darion Jones has a spring in his step, spring in his legs when he jumped. Like, he's looked as good as most pass catchers as I've seen this year, and he's probably doesn't get talked about near as much. But that kid can play. Like, I don't think Omaha North is winning on Friday, but I wouldn't be surprised if Darion Jones makes a play or two in that game.
Yeah, Darion Jones is a stud. He's kind of a little bit like his brother, where it was like this late bloomer thing, but he's kind of a little bit ahead of that, actually,
Yeah.
from what Donovan was.
They're physically a little different because I feel like
Yes.
Donovan was built a little bit more, if that makes sense.
Yeah, shorter and big, like
I don't want to
bulkier.
say stoutier, but whereas Darian is just kind of rangy. Like,
Long, yeah. Mhm.
yeah, he's almost more of like a track athlete type wide receiver, defensive back, which isn't how you would describe Donovan, though he has all of the sort of athletic assets that would go with that. Like, I'm trying to paint a picture here, and I don't know if I'm doing a very good job of it, but they're physically different, but they have a lot of the same athletic gifts.
Yeah, I fully agree with you on that. And obviously, as camp stuff happens and he's able to run for people and do all the, underwear Olympic stuff, he's going to test really well. And that's what Donovan did, was tested really, really well. He just makes plays. I've
Yeah.
seen, like, we're at the Central game. I saw them against Papillion La Vista. I saw them on Friday in the second half against Elkhorn South. He just makes plays. He's always around the ball. Against Papillion, he had two picks. One was a pick six and a 36-yard touchdown reception. Like, he just is always around the ball and always making plays. Physically, he can put on weight. You like kind of his frame. But I will tell you, he very much so has this chip on his shoulder and feels a little disrespected kind of guy and all of that stuff from just, he doesn't have any offers like that, and
People
it's,
like me, basically.
yeah, not
Couple
me,
seconds.
because I've talked about
No,
him a lot. So,
it's me. I'll raise my hand.
yeah.
I'm part of it.
So he has that little chip on his shoulder, and it helps him. I mean, he plays really hard. It's just a matter of, in that game in particular against Westside, can they get the run game going? Darion Cannon's a nice back. He's been dinged up. Can they get that going? And again, it's another rematch of a game that was pretty lopsided earlier. Yeah, early in the year, where running clock happened and stuff like that. So, but if I know one thing, Larry Martin will have those guys ready to play And there's just something after watching them beat Elkhorn South last week. There's just this community feel, and they're really playing for each other, and they really like each other, and it reminds me a lot of like when Calvin Strong was there. Just the vibe is real together,
Mhm.
and that's neat to see because you don't get that all the time. But Larry and his staff have done a tremendous job with that group. And um, Connor Cook is a guy that, like, if you're just watching warmups, he's their left tackle at North. You watch warmups, you're like, whoa, who's that guy? Because he's a monster.
Mhm.
It's huge. So, and he has a couple of group of five offers, I believe. So, you know, that's a guy. And without Tyson, it's hard though. But they've done a nice job up front. And the one guy for North, and you and I have talked about him before. And Nebraska is very interested. Is Max Clark,
Yep.
like they're the inside linebacker for them. North always does a really good job with their inside linebackers and has for some time. Like I go back to Jason Martin, who actually ended up at Midland. That's just because he was like 5'10". But Max is big, like a big physical kid. He's probably what 6'2", 6'3".
6'2". Yep.
Yeah, yeah. He also
215.
he also has. I looked it up the other day because we're going through postseason awardsy stuff. Looked it up the other day, and he has total tackles like 120 something right now, and he has 23 and a half tackles for loss, something like that. It's over 20 tackles for loss. That's insane, right? Like that's like how do how do you do that, right?
Yeah.
So he's been the mainstay in in the middle of that defense, and he's been terrific. Statistically, he leads Class A in tackles and tackles for loss. So he's been really good.
Yeah. Let's run through a few games outside of Class A, like really quickly, just a quick
Right.
thought or two. Class B, you get Bennington, Elkhorn North, Jace Reynolds.
Hmm.
Every time I've watched Elkhorn North with Jace Reynolds, he's intriguing because he can play differently based on the matchup. And there's very few guys I think that you can do that with at a high school level. He's someone that can line up as a nickelback if you need him there. He can line up as a straight linebacker. He can come off the edge and blitz. Jace Reynolds, 2026 athlete, Nebraska's recruiting. It hasn't picked up a ton outside of Nebraska, but this is a guy that I think people are going to look at the junior film, and I think his offers are coming. I really do.
Yeah, he looks the part, and you're right. He can play multiple positions. Like, is he had? It's kind of like, what do you want him to be at the next level? Is he outside linebacker? Is he like a strong safety? He can play tight end and maybe receiver stuff? Like, you can use him a lot of different ways. Super intriguing guy. Two other guys, I guess, for the Elkhorn North is Alex Uckman is another one of those, like, can use him different ways and like physical guy. But Barry Freeze is a guy that has taken a lot of visits here recently. Pretty sure he was at Iowa, maybe Michigan, something like that. Just, game day stuff. He also leads them in tackles. He's averaging 10 a game. And he's been tremendous, actually, frankly, for them on the defensive side. Over 100, I think it's 110 total tackles this year so far. So, 111 total tackles. So, a lot of those assisted, but that just means he's around the ball, right?
Yeah.
So, those are kind of a few guys there. And then I'll just Bennington real fast. Kyler Lordson is amazing. He's going to probably be a 4-time state champion wrestler. Uh, he he's close to, I think he's at 90 some tackles right now, total tackles on the year. If he can get to over 100 total tackles, and he's close to double digit tackles for loss as well, that'll be 3 straight years that he's had over 100 total tackles and over double digit tackles for loss. It's pretty remarkable. And he
Getting it done.
flies around. He
Yeah.
flies around. I was there. I saw their first half against McCook the other night in the quarterfinals. They use him everywhere. He's basically their shutdown guy. If like against Scott, the game they lost, they just were like, okay, their receiver was killing them, and they're like, go, just you're gonna play corner now. So, and Jack Jansen is a guy for Bennington too. That's really good up front, and probably a lower level kind of D2E guy. But he. If you remember the state championship game last year against Scott, he single handedly wrecked them.
Yeah. Well, Scott gets Seward in the other Class B matchup. You have any quick thoughts on those two?
Yeah, Treston Haas, the quarterback at Seward, super intriguing guy. Like super intriguing. Big, 6'2", 6'3", nice arm. He's had a great year. Vahalik, their receivers had a great year too at Seward. Seward is a team I saw at the Norris 7-on-7 tournament in June, and I was like, whoa, like who's that guy? Like, so Haas has had a great year. And then Alex Van Dyke has had a tremendous year too for Scott at quarterback. He can you watch Scott traditionally, it's we're gonna run veer and like we're just gonna run the quarterback. He's not done that as much, but he can still use his legs. And Joe Kaliga has been their best player though. He had I believe a kickoff return, a pick six, and a touchdown in the win over Bennington, touchdown reception. So he's been awesome, and he probably is actually should be on everyone's list as far as a receiver is concerned for the all Nebraska, all state, super state, whatever state teams. I mean, I'm not saying just Class A, Class B. I'm saying all of it. So yeah, that, and then obviously Connor Booth and Wahoo Newman are in the C1 semifinals, and like I think he's top 5 in rushing in the country or something.
C2, right? They're in the
or C2. Yeah, C2 game. Sorry.
Yep, that was the last one I wanted to get to because it was first game of the year. We were both at that. They take on Norfolk Catholic, who if both of those teams win on Friday, you get the rematch. First game, last game. It wasn't close early. I think,
but it was close.
Newman scored late to kind of bring it back around. I wanted to ask you about Connor Booth, though. This is a guy that I think people see the numbers and they are eye-popping. What does he look like when you've been able to actually watch him play?
Yeah, that game we watched, I was surprised they didn't use him different ways. Maybe some eye candy stuff. You and I actually both talked about that.
That was as stagnant as offense could get. And if they do the same thing again, I don't think it's going to go well.
It is literally line up. We're going to run through the A gaps, and we're going to just hand the ball off to this dude and hope he runs through your linebackers and defensive line. Like there isn't a whole lot of, trickeration or even movement at all. One thing I would do is move him around a little bit, like line him up in the slot, shift him, motion him to the back just to get the linebackers' eyes moving a little bit. And they didn't do any of that in that first game. It was the first game of the year, so maybe they changed that. For me, he's super athletic. He actually probably reminds me more of like a Barrett Liebentritt.
Interesting.
Like I think he probably transitions to a fullback because I guess I personally just haven't seen the wiggle part, like the make you miss stuff.
It's hard though because he's straight line faster than almost everyone he plays. So like he hits that hole, he doesn't really have to make people miss. He just keeps his balance and runs by people.
He's a tremendous athlete. Like his underwear Olympics numbers are great.
Nebraska loves him. I don't know that they view him. I'd be surprised if he moves to a fullback early in his career because I think they view him as a guy who can play the straight running back position for him. What's interesting is they don't use him through the passing game much, so I don't know how good his hands are or what he can do in that regard. But he's a really unique – he's a home run hitter, I think, in a way that Nebraska currently doesn't have on their roster.
Right. And he's a multi-sport guy. Like he's a really good baseball player. He's going to try and do both, obviously. I think we all know that. And he does. Like if he gets to the second level, third level, he's definitely gone. Second level, he can go to. It's just, I guess I just go back to that one game like at the beginning of the year, and I've seen him play a handful of times throughout his career, and I just keep thinking like, oh, like I just want more, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
which is hard to say. I just want to see him do more. He produces numbers, obviously, but I want to see him do more. Um, which no knock on him because he's awesome, and he's probably going to end up being the Gatorade Player of the Year, I would imagine.
He probably should be. I mean, just
Yeah,
statistically, no one's probably meant more to their team than he has.
yeah,
He's their entire offense. I mean, he
yeah,
really is.
no question. And he doesn't even play both ways. So normally in C2, you have guys that play both ways like that. So Battle Creek's big up front though. And so they have a guy like Dawson Amick's a really good lineman for them. So we'll see that game. That game will be really interesting. I'm planning on going to that at least for the second half. So
All right.
it'll be intriguing.
Last thing, putting you on the spot here. And I'm taking away Millard South West Side. You can't say that one. I'm halfway tempted to take out another game because I feel like I know where you're going to go with this. What is the matchup you want to see the most at Memorial Stadium, either Monday or Tuesday, depending on which classification it is? No West Side, Millard South, because I think that's the answer for most people who follow this closely. Give me the next one.
Sandy Creek, Stanton.
Okay, you didn't go where I thought you were going to go.
You thought I was going to go Scott Bennington, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. I figured you were going to definitely go Scott Bennington.
No, Sandy Creek Stanton. They were the two best teams in 8-man one, I guess, last year. They played in a semifinal. Sandy Creek didn't have Hudson Devlin the last two games of the year for them because he got hurt. And he is he's the best defensive player probably in 8-man one. Ethan Shaw, yes, Brian Shaw's son, is the quarterback for Sandy Creek, and Stanton has Barrett Wilkie, Becker Pullman, Ren Brown, the big lineman committed to Texas Tech. Mm-hmm. So there's star power there. Connor Rempe's another guy for Sandy Creek. There's star power there. These are the two. They were the two best teams last year in the class, and they're the two best teams this year in the class, and it has been that way the whole year. That's the matchup that everyone that follows, 8-man one football wants to see, and I think it would be great. Like, I think that game would be awesome, and there's a little bit of like Sandy Creek wants that payback from losing the close game in the semis last year. Everyone that I talked to said that game last year in the semis was basically the state championship game and then if you look at that state championship game, Stanton just rolled in that game. So that's the game everyone wants to see. They were hoping they'd be on opposite sides. They are. They got one more game to get it done. But that's the game that I have pegged and kind of pegged it for a while. Basically, after I saw them both in practices, I was like, oh yeah, I want to see these two play each other for a state championship.
All right. Great stuff, Mike. We appreciate it as always. Where can people follow your work, find your work? Where can they see you besides, random gyms or fields or softball fields, soccer fields, baseball fields, football fields, all the fields? But where can they find your work online?
Yeah, I guess hurrdatsports.com. And if you go to the prep side or Hale Varsity side of it, there's little tabs at the top there. But hurrdatsports.com, you can find my written stuff that I do. And then obviously social media on all the social medias, I guess, every single one of them. So like I think TikTok and Instagram and X and Facebook and
Mastodon, Blue
and
Sky.
I'm not down
Social.
I'm not down that road quite that far yet. I'm still trying to figure out the other stuff. I'm old.
Okay, fair.
So I need to figure out the other stuff before I jump into the 45 other things.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. Fair enough. All right. Well, hey, Mike, we appreciate it as always, and appreciate you having you on here. Maybe we try to do this again next week to preview state matchups. Seems like that could be a good time. But
Hey,
everyone, check out the great work Mike Sautter has. Be sure to check out what we have going on at Husker247 as well. We'll catch you next time with another Husker247 podcast.